Okay, so your starter for this lesson. Yesterday, we looked at conventions. In your green book, I would like you to add the title Conventions to a new double page. So that's just so you have two blank pages in front of you. Then on the first page, complete the following sentences. A convention is, an advantage of a convention is. This will take you roughly 5 minutes to get all that organised and completed. So let's go over some possibilities, but first of all, let's see what you can tell me. So if you can raise your hand to share an answer, that would be fabulous. So hopefully we've gone through a few different suggestions, and I'm going to show you some of mine. I'm not saying that any of yours are incorrect, but these are just some of the possibilities that you could have had for your own answers. If you didn't answer because you weren't too sure, you can use one of these to copy down into your own book. So a convention is a technical drawing, because that's what that term means, a technical drawing. A convention is another term for a technical drawing, so same answer, just a different way of writing it. A convention is a drawing that shows something accurately. A convention is something that is used in construction to show what the end result might be. So again, those are just some possibilities. So if you didn't get an answer because you weren't too sure, you're welcome to copy one of these down into your books. Next one. An advantage of a convention is that it shows what the end result might be, or will be, sorry. An advantage of a convention is it represents something accurately. An advantage of a convention is that it can show what the client wants so the workers know exactly what they're doing. So again, a lot of variety there, and if you weren't too sure, you can copy one of these down into your own book. So let's really quickly remind ourselves as to what we looked at last lesson. So all of this work is part of Unit 2 of Constructing the Built Environment, and it's all about developing a construction project. And conventions falls under interpreting technical information, because that's what a convention is. It's something technical, it's informative, and interpret just means to understand. So it just means that we've got to understand what that image is showing us. So these are the conventions that you were introduced to yesterday, or that you were shown quite briefly, and you may have had a worksheet activity about these different conventions. So what we're going to do now is a very short little quiz. You can either raise your hands to share an answer, or if you've got them, you can use a whiteboard. Choice is entirely up to you. So you might want to pause the video here to get organised if you need to collect anything, such as paper or a pen, or you can just write your answers into your green books at the back. Again, choice is entirely up to you. So first one, what is the name of this convention? Have a think, and then let's see if there's some hands raised up to offer some answers. Please don't shout out. Well done if you suggested that it is a floor plan. Next, what is the name of this convention? It is, of course, a section. What is the name of this convention? Now, this is a trickier one, so don't worry if you weren't too sure, but the term is front elevation. And you can also get side elevation, above elevation, below elevation, etc. And all it means is it will just show one view of one thing. So in this case, it shows you the front view of a home, and that's the only view that you see. Now, hopefully this one we recognise. So what is the name of this convention? Well done if you guessed accurately. It is, of course, isometric, something that you would have looked at hopefully in Key Stage 3 as well as our lesson yesterday. And then finally, what is the name of this convention? Again, well done if you guessed accurately. It is, of course, two-point perspective. So task 1, a bit of retrieval. This was a convention that you looked at yesterday, isometric. And the first task for this lesson is to practice this skill in your green books on that first page under the sentences you've just written. There is a video on the next slide if you're not too sure what to do. But the purpose of this is just to practice that skill that you were introduced to. So don't worry if you can't get it perfect. It's just a practice, and you can either do some cubes, or if you want to do some houses again, there are some houses at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to try and copy one or more of those, or maybe some 3D letters. Again, choice is up to you, but this should take you roughly between 5 and 10 minutes. So your next task is going to be to practice isometric drawing, and you're going to be given a worksheet with an isometric grid on it, which will make your life so much easier. But I want to show you how to actually draw in isometric. I want to show you what these steps actually look like when they're put together. So if you could just pay attention and watch the screen for me. I am using a laptop which has a touchpad, keypad thing on it. So my drawing won't be as perfect as yours, but I'm going to give it a really good go. So I'm going to start with step 1, and that is simply by drawing a simple line going upwards. There you go, step 1. Move on to step 2, and step 2 shows that you then need to, on the top of the line you've just drawn, draw 2 diagonal lines going upwards, and I'm going to try and keep them equal or even in length. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. Step 3. You then draw 2 more diagonal lines, but this time at the bottom of the line I just drew. So I'm going to try and draw that now. Okay, mine are a little bit wavy. And again, the drawing shows that you want to keep them equal in length, because in step 4, which I'm going to move on to now, you now want to join the ends of these lines up using straight lines. Whoops, went a bit wonky there. Okay, so far so good. Okay, this is a trickier one, step 5. So for step 5, I'm actually going to add a few extra lines, if I may. I'm actually going to add a line on the step 5 diagram. I'm going to draw a line from the first line that would be drawn. I'm going to draw it straight up, just like that. I'm going to do that on mine as well. Straight up. Here we go. Because what? Oh, and also a cross. My bad. Also a cross. There, and then there on mine as well. Okay. Now there's a reason I'm doing this. We now have 4 triangles. 1, 2, 3, and then of course 4. They're all equal. And they're equal because the above view is going to be equal to the other 2. So that is why the 4 triangles at the top will be equal. And by drawing in these blue guidelines I just have, that's going to help me better judge the distance from, let me get my red, from here, whoops, to here, and then I reckon to here. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to draw 3 little dots, starting in the top of that first line I just drew. So if I go step 1, there. Then into the middle where my the 2 lines I just drew overlapped, so X marks the spot. And then this third dot here, I've drawn it or added it roughly so it's the same distance from the center one to the end one. I know that sounds like a lot of gobbledygook, but the distance between these 2 and these 2 are roughly the same. And that makes my life easier because now all I have to do is draw a line from the corners to that dot and then to the other corner, and there we go. I have roughly 4 equal triangles. 1, 2, 3, 3, there we go. for. So I've done that on a keyboard, which is why mine doesn't look as accurate as yours. But I would suggest you try drawing in these blue guidelines, because they are quite useful, and they are quite helpful. And I can even try and erase or remove some of the guidelines I've previously drawn, and that will leave me with a lovely, oops, well, a partially lovely isometric cube. There we go. So the guidelines do help. But you will have some isometric paper to practice on, so give it a good old go and see how you get on. So we're going to look at another convention this lesson, but first let's remind ourselves as to why we are doing this. Because some of you might be thinking, it's just cover, this doesn't mean anything, but it really, really does. Conventions are a huge part of your course, and let me explain to you why. So these are some examples of different conventions, very technical. These are used in the construction industry. And some of you might find that you go into a career within construction, and although you might not be expected to draw any final designs or final plans out for clients or contractors, you will be expected to understand what a convention is actually showing you, so that you know how to actually do the work you've been employed to do. And that could be something as simple as installing a kitchen counter. You will be shown a drawing that represents where in the room that will go. It will show you the dimensions of the kitchen counter, so you can check that what you've got is completely accurate and right to use. It might be you're installing a staircase if you go into carpentry, and you'll need to know the depth and width and length of each piece and where they actually go onto the wall, where the barriers go, what the barriers look like. You might be asked to install a stud wall. In that case, you need to know the height of the room, you need to know where the beams are in the ceiling and the floor. So these are just some small examples as to what you might come across in the construction industry. So although if you go for an apprenticeship, you go to college, or even if you go to uni, you will be taught this skill. But this is a wonderful thing that you can share within an interview. You can share the fact that you've had experience working with conventions and that you feel comfortable being able to read them. And that can really, really help you in the long run. So, which convention are we going to look at today? This is one of my favourites. We're going to be looking at 2-point perspective. So you may have seen this perhaps in Key Stage 3, just because sometimes I do try and drop this into my lessons, because as I said, it is one of my favourites. And this is a really, really good convention to look at, especially if you're considering the career of an architect, or in architecture, sorry. But again, even if you're going into plumbing or electrician, it's still a good convention to understand, because this might be something that you're shown when completing a project. So task 2. Now this is going to take you roughly 15 minutes. For this task you will need a pencil and a ruler and maybe an eraser. So if you don't have one, you will need to go find one now, or when your teacher gives you that opportunity. So hold fire for 1 minute. And then step 2, I'd like you to watch the YouTube video below in full. It's only 3 minutes. But then the third task, I'd like you to play the video again, but this time after each step is shown, I'd like you to pause the video so then you can practice in your green books, anywhere on those 2 pages that you've been working on. If you need to go onto a 3rd page, that is absolutely fine. If you'd rather work on plain paper and then glue that work into your book, again, that's absolutely fine if that's how you'd like to work. But this is just a brilliant opportunity for you to practice this skill. Okay, so task 3. So this one will take you 15 plus minutes. It might take you till the end of the lesson. But now that you have practiced the skill using the video, I'd like you to try again. But this time, I would really like you to draw a 2-point perspective house of your own design. Or if you've actually picked up the skill quite quickly and you really want to challenge yourself, I'd love it if you could draw your own street. So it could have houses, it could have shops, it could have a play park, a skate park, it can have a roller coaster. I really don't mind. But the thing you have to really focus on here, guys, is the convention, is the skill of 2-point perspective. Again, if you're not too sure, the video might be played a third time if you ask very politely, or it could be played in the background. And on the following slides, there are just a couple images of different 2-point perspective streets to give you some inspiration and some ideas. Please don't worry about adding colour to your work. This is something that we're going to look at in another lesson. We're going to look at how we can actually add symbols or colours to these conventions to make them even more accurate. So just focus on the actual drawing style or drawing skill just for this lesson.